If every personality type had one character that truly matched their energy, who would it be? In this video, we're going to discuss the fictional characters that I think represent the personality types the best. Some you might agree with, and some you might totally disagree with. So stay tuned for my in-depth explanations. Let's get into it. When it comes down to the 16 personalities and fictional characters, there's some specific characters that I think fit better than others. Of course, none of these characters really have personality types because, of course, they're fictional. So it's more just for fun. This video will have some characters which you'll probably disagree with. They definitely aren't all going to line up with personality database or any kind of databases that are, where people vote on the letters, because I'm doing it more thinking about the cognitive functions and having specific arguments that relate to the whole type. And these are just some good representatives that I think fit these personality types, and I'll explain why in the video. Leave a comment down below which character is your favorite. Let me know. Please like and subscribe as well, and let's get into it. So at first we have Jim Halpert. This one will be a controversial one. He is a typical INFJ in my opinion, and some of the reasons people don't think so are reasons because I think that they don't really know who an INFJ is. INFJs are pretty misrepresented themselves, how they act, and we'll get into it. NISFETI. So Jim Halpert, relationship focused, not career focused like an ENTP would be, focused on his relationships. At a job he doesn't really care about, stays because of a relationship. As soon as that relationship is gone, he changes the job and then gets into another relationship. Very focused on relationships, very idealistic, very emotionally expressive, good with his emotions, good with his relationships, able to express them very diplomatically, very responsibly. Doesn't always share his thoughts, but generally tries not to hurt people's feelings, tries to turn the other cheek and be kind at every, chance. Generally introverted, while yes, he initiates with Pam, for example. He's not going up to Michael and distracting him. He's not going up to Stanley. He's not going up to Phyllis and talking her ear off like an ENTP would, being that ENTPs are initiating informative types. They can't stop talking. They're constantly talking about what they think. They're constantly sharing their experience with other people. They're not direct. They're not straight to the point like an INFJ would be. They're not giving little quips, little witty remarks like an INFJ. People think, oh, well, ENTPs are TI users. They're witty. Well, so are INFJs. They're, Jim Halpert's a shy person. He's not looking for leadership positions. He's not looking to constantly be heard by everyone. He doesn't mind just sticking to his close one relationship. And that's what INFJs do. They're introverted. They care about one or two relationships, but they do care about those relationships. They are good at expressing, their empathy and being able to care about other people, but they do so in a mild-mannered way, which Jim Halpert does. He's also idealistic. He, is able to, take those big romantic moments and be, a little bit more intuitive about them. And in general with Pam obviously an NESI user, very quiet, shy, definitely SI, very loyal to people without necessarily questioning that loyal, has a trouble being decisive and courageous. That's one of her main arcs, is that she struggles with that. She's not an NI user, and thusly very incompatible with an ENTP as well. So no way in hell she's with a duelist. And then we have Ted Lasso for ENFJs. I think Ted Lasso is a quintessential ENFJ, very FE. He has that high FE leadership, caring about inspiring other people to, have self-esteem, to feel good about themselves, to go after their self-worth. He's also focused individually on not giving up in sports, never giving up on his relationship, for example. He has a hard time letting people go. That's very high NI, but also very, very diplomatic, always about helping other people, always about trying to make sure other people are happy, other people are laughing, very externally focused. Also very much an extroverted structure type, right? So ENFJs are structure types. They care about being the leader, about being in control, making sure all of the pieces are in place, putting those in place for other people to thrive, and being able to kind of help other people feel good about themselves, and using that kind of charisma to be likable, and using that as a leadership style. So I think he works very well. And then we have Phoebe Buffet, and this one's also going to be controversial. INFP is my determination, and if you've met certain INFPs, you'll know this is very true. Very social, of course, just like any NF type is, socially focused, relationship focused. But where their idealism and where Phoebe's optimism lies is a little bit more with her introverted world, very strong towards her own authentic feelings. And ENFPs just aren't actually really like this. If you know an ENFP, ENFPs are a little bit different. They're a little bit more, willing to conform to the external world. Phoebe's quite strong with her own feelings, her own identity, her own past with SI, and very, very strong with her own emotions, expressing those emotions, sharing those emotions primarily through SI and FI. And INFPs are very social for introverts. They care a lot about their community, a lot about the social situation, but still very strong with their introverted world. Then we have ENFPs. I think John Dorian or JD from Scrubs, this character is a very good representation of ENFPs. He's very imaginative. The whole show is about him imagining different situations, coming up with different possibilities, and getting stuck in his head in that way. That's another way that he really expresses his creativity. Also very people focused throughout the show, caring about relationships with other people, trying to express his feelings very openly. He's very affiliative, works on a team, wants to be connected to the people in his life, connect people across different relationships. And he's often looking for approval from people like a Dr. Cox or from his superiors, looking for that approval, hero worshiping, looking for that, and trying to connect emotionally to those people, expressing those emotions very openly and without necessarily fearing that. And often sometimes prioritizing his own feelings and being able to express them very well, have a strong sense of self-identity and a strong sense of self-esteem. I would say that overall he represents those ENFP traits in a very strong way. Then we have INTJs. I think Walter White is a great representative of INTJs. Very tactical and strategic with NI, always trying to think of the next move, always looking ahead to the future, sometimes very paranoid with any nemesis, but generally very optimistic with his plans and very, very willing to do them, very direct, not always sharing with low SI, not always letting other people in on it. Also very focused on things like money, power, respect with that TE, and being able to kind of create plans to make money. And then there's the third and fourth functions, aspiring with that SE aspirational, that fourth function, to extend resources to other people, to provide for other people. SE is all about providing for others, and he's very focused on that now that he's in his specific mindset, of course, to provide, to be remembered. Those are very important things for an INTJ and very important things for this specific character. We have Leslie Knope, who I think represents ENTJs very well. Very, very high TE, focused on systems and how they work. We're focused on rules, laws, politics, being efficient, political power, how that works, and trying to change the political system. That's NINTE, trying to change the system, being very ambitious as well with that supplemental NI, that introverted ambition, very driven, focused towards her goal, very focused on having those goals change the system, very hardworking and always very focused on getting things done, but still extroverted, able to communicate with other people. Also kind of a structure type, a good leader, someone who's able to coordinate things, someone who's able to have plans come together. I think that Leslie Knope represents an ENTJ very well for this reason. And then we have INTPs, and I think L from Death Note, if you know this character, is a good representative of INTPs. Of course, there's many, but this is one. L is very intellectual and thoughtful, of course, always making logical deductions with like a TI hero. A low awareness of things like appearance, right? Low SE, not always holding themselves in a way that is specifically catered to what other people are experiencing, kind of in their comfort zone, doing the things they want, fidgeting in the way that makes them comfortable, even if that might look strange to other people, but just focused on food, experience, comfort with SI, supplementing that internal logic. And I think that is also kind of supplemented from a little bit of an ethical code with that FE, being kind of justice focused, focusing on, making sure that what they do is right for other people and trying to bring justice, still having that kind of, supply the thinking and coordinate with it. Then we have ENTPs. I think a good representative of ENTPs is someone like Rick Sanchez. Very intellectual and imaginative, very visionary, but also very extroverted, able to communicate with lots of different people, communicate these ideas, express the thoughts kind of without a filter like a TI parent does. Able to manipulate others even with that high NE, being able to understand what people are going to want out of situations and kind of manipulate their desires and their paths to fit his goals. Also, a bit of supplemental SI and FE you see in the show with those lower functions. A desire for things like fulfillment and personal satisfaction, very focused on their past. They are bitterness from the past, things that have gone wrong, feeling resentful sometimes, very focused on that past, and then being kind of self destructive, like a low sensing type is. But a deep down care for other people, a care for a family, and some level of empathy that kind of supplements their creative genius. And then we have ISFJs. I think Marge Simpson, for example, is a good representative of ISFJs. Very responsible, very obedient, very duty focused, focused on doing the right thing, focused on doing, the routine, taking care of the family, using that FE and SI very well. Kind of a little bit shy with being an introvert, but also still very caring and considerate. Very supportive and reliable as well, putting up with things that Homer might do or the kids might do, and being reliable, being able to stick through and endure bad experiences, being loyal through bad experiences, but still having a general ethical code to be kind to others. Then we have ESFJs. I think Monica Geller is a good representative of an ESFJ representation, excuse me. She loves giving, always trying to give things. Oh, I'm going to give cookies to people. I'm going to make this. Very focused on making other people happy as a sense of self-worth. Also a little bit of supplemental SI, always wanting to be clean, always wanting to be organized. Very focused on that in her world, but still an extroverted energy and communicating with friends in a social way. She can be pretty expressive about her feedback, expressive of what she thinks, kind of saying those without an unnecessary filter, wants to be heard, wants to be listened to by other people. And so for these reasons, I think she's a pretty good example. Then we have ISTJs. I think Mikasa from Attack on Titan is a pretty good representative of ISTJs. Very high SI, kind of like a rock, very enduring, but very, very strong internally as well. Very disciplined, right? But also focused on remembering others, being able to be that internal storage bank of the character of other people. That's kind of what ISTJs do, to remember other people and be able to kind of pass that on through tradition, through memories, and through storytelling. But very, very strong internally, always consistent, always a very consistent character of who they are. Also a little bit analytically focused on analyzing situations, being intelligent with that TE, but also a little bit of that deep emotions deep down. That FI a little bit lower, but still very strong when it comes to preferences, when it comes to love, when it comes to who they care about. So very specifically focused on that, but a little bit lower, not always expressing those feelings outwardly. Then we have ESTJs. I think Amy Santiago is a good representative of ESTJs. Very organized, always trying to be, clean and organized with that high SI, but also, structure type focused, TE focused, focused on efficiency, focused on results, focused on passing tests, career, right? That career focus with TE means they care about what they're doing. They care about that thinking focused over their relationships sometimes, and is also giving lots of feedback. With SI, a little bit of hero worship as well. With SI, can sometimes look up to other people and really admire them and become, very obsessed with others. The other ISFPs, one I thought was kind of funny, was someone like Philip J. Fry from Futurama. The high level of FI authenticity, very expressive about their emotions, very strong about their emotions. Sometimes can be a little bit irresponsible, can sometimes not think of the consequences of their actions, but will try and do the right thing and do what they think is good when faced with a certain situation. Still very, very true to their emotions and what they feel is right. A little bit relationship focused with that high FI, but wanting to be independent with lower NI, wanting to do their own thing and kind of go their own way at the same time, and be lazy sometimes if they want to. They want to have the option to sometimes just have that freedom like ISFPs like, but still strong with their feelings. Then we have ESFPs. I think Michael Scott, for example, is a great representative of ESFPs. Very extroverted energy with SE hero, always trying to make other people laugh, always trying to get other people's attention, always trying to make things fun. That's classic SE hero. Very sensory about that as well. Very expressive with his internal emotions, though. Always bringing up his feelings, his moods, negative moods, positive moods, constantly expressing those emotions, even when they get in the way of things like efficiency and productivity. But in general, very focused on their feelings. Sometimes wants to look cool with that tertiary and at TE, wanting other people to respect him and think he's cool, but kind of in a childish, fun way. Not always trying to demand respect like a Dwight, for example, but kind of childishly hoping people think he's cool, but still a prioritization on connection with that FI. Then we have ISTPs. I think someone like a Ron Swanson is a good example of an ISTP, a very independent thinker with high TI, being very pragmatic, being very driven for what he wants to do, not necessarily wanting to necessarily do things for others all the time, but deep down he does, and that is shown through his actions over the course of the show. Wants to work outside of the system, kind of be analytical, be logical, doing his own thing, very critical of the system with TI, but deep down, not always being super emotional, being very analytical, but the emotions do come from his care for others with his FE, very compatible with someone like a Leslie Knope, giving advice, being able to help her feelings, and being able to express those emotions externally when he needs to. And then for ESTP, I think a really great representative of ESTPs is Jeff Winger. This is another one that's probably controversial if you even made it this far. Thank you for watching. In my opinion, he's a pretty obvious ESTP, as you see through the course of the show. One of my favorite characters. Starts off very ISTJ shadow focused on rules, law, money, doing that kind of the social pressure to get that good job. But then over time, losing that reputation focus and being more focused on NIFE, social connections, wanting those relationships with other people, developing that INFJ subconscious. So over time, going from that more money focused to more people focused, very extroverted, very loud, focused on things like appearance for sure, without a doubt, an SE user, focused on sometimes being a little vain like a sensing SE user, and focused on appearance and sometimes seen a little shallow, but wanting to share experience, wanting intimacy with other people, caring a lot about that external approval, of course, but also very TIFE, expressing constant thoughts, being critical, saying what they think, but what they think being connected to FE. He's not just saying what he thinks to be mean. Sometimes he might, but he also often tries to inspire the feelings of other people, trying to make other people feel better, boost other people's self-esteem. A lot of his speeches are combining a little bit of truth and honesty and brutal directness with making people feel better and connecting the group and finding social connection through FE. So very, very much a TIFE user, very, very much an SE and I user as well. And eventually, of course, becoming a teacher like a lot of Templar types do. So I hope this explains some of the different characters I think are really good representatives of the types, and why, of course, none of these characters really have types. So you can debate this all day long, and I think this will be pretty controversial because a lot of these types aren't the ones that are typed on a personality database. But you guys have to remember that these aren't even really voted on by types. They're voted on by letters, and even if they were voted on by types, it's just anybody can vote. So you definitely have to think outside of the box for some of these types, figure out your reasoning why. Let me know in the comments down below your reasoning. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe as it helps the channel, and I hope you all have a great day.